Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, PCSO lotto operations are back.
Yung mga tao masaya din dahil yung iba kasi nagbabaka sakali, di ba? So parang habit na nila yon para baka yumaman sila.
Following the president's move to lift its suspension,
they should be happy that the findings of the president's investigation show that there is no corruption.
But the probe will continue on the massive corruption inside the PCSO.
I will leave that to the investigators.
Also monitoring online gambling operations.
The estimate in terms of personal income taxes that should have been withheld but were not withheld was a minimum of 2 billion pesos a month.
And the remaining tax reform programs of the Duterte administration. Finance Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino joins us live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. Corruption allegations hounding the Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office are still unclear. PCSO General Manager Royina Garma says the agency had these issues even before she came in. Meantime, President Rodrigo Duterte has already lifted his order to shut down lotto operations, but one senator questions why corruption continues in the PCSO when the agency has hundreds of so-called confidential agents. The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee is set to investigate the issue. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Senator Win Gatchalian on the phone. Senator, good morning. Thank you for taking our call.
Good morning, Pinky. Good morning to our listeners.
Lotto operations are back as ordered by President Rodrigo Duterte, and you said, of course, this is a welcome development for about 6,000 lotto operators.
Correct. From our analysis, lotto is largely automated, and the leakage is almost zero, and the monitoring for lotto is quite close and up to date. What the problem is actually coming from the STL operations, because STL is still a very manual process. And looking at the COA reports for the last 10 years and also the investigation that transpired in the lower house during the 17th Congress, spearheaded by Congressman Tambunting, there's a lot of anomalies from underreporting, from not tallying of books, from improper recording of proceeds. And this is actually a very disturbing anomaly, because government gave an opportunity for operators to earn, but instead they are not permitting the proper proceeds, and in turn, this is hampering the social services being given to our constituents.
The operators who are getting licenses for SDLs are actually dummies of wetting lords, according to former PCSO Chairman Ayong Maliksi, sir. Do you agree?
Correct. That is the accusation, and I think a common knowledge from a lot of the local governments and people who are involved in this type of gambling and operation. And this is actually not the intention of STL. The intention of STL is to bring wetting, the illegals number game, into the mainstream, and, and require them to pay proper taxes and proper contribution to various levels of government. But obviously they are undervaluing it, meaning they are only declaring a portion of their earnings and pocketing a large portion of their earnings. And I guess to detect this, you also need connivance inside. And this is where I question the 505 confidential agents that are in the payroll of PCSO, because these agents are meant to detect, to investigate, and to stop underreporting and underremitting.
I want to bring that up on the screen, sir, because this was your tweet yesterday that about 30% of the employees of the PCSO are actually confidential agents. Meron ho kayong chart na nilabas dyan. It totals 505, 200 plus in the main office or the head office, and 241 in the branch office. Hence, your question was, bakit may under-remittance pa rin at bakit may illegal gambling pa rin?
Just to give you some comparison, Pinky, here in Valenzuela we have approximately 500 policemen that secures the entire city of 630,000. PCSO alone has the same amount of enforcement personnel. So meaning marami yan, kaya nilang magbantay ng isang syudad. Pero their primary responsibility is to detect, investigate, and stop underreporting, underremitting by STL operators or the wetting operators in their locality.
Yeah.
So the question begs, how come even though we have 505 confidential agents, that is almost 30% of the total workforce of PCSO, we still have this problem that is plaguing PCSO for the last many years.
Do you question, Senator, the composition of these confidential agents?
I question the operation of PCSO. They're the ones who hand out contracts. They're the ones who collect proceeds from these operators. They're the ones who investigate. They have the power to investigate. They have the power to stop the operations of these unscrupulous operators. But how come for the last many years, since 2014, the agency is being plagued with so many anomalies?
Yeah. And just to add to that, of course, was the COA report. However,
Correct.
However, sir, there's also a suggestion from your end a couple of days ago when this news broke that you are actually saying that maybe government should just let the private sector operate lottos and casinos and get proceeds. For example, sir, a monthly proceed from the games.
Correct. My view, Pinky, is it cannot be business as usual. If you just replace people from the top, replace the board, replace the GM, I'm afraid this will happen again in the later years because replacing people has been happening in the past few administration and nothing has been happening. So my view is to reform the entire operations of PCSO and to simplify it, privatize, to simplify and use existing government organizations who are very good in their core competencies. Like, for example, the Department of Finance is very good in collecting, so let them handle the privatization and collection. The NBI is very good in investigation and prosecuting. Let them handle the task of investigation. And in terms of charity, who else is very good in giving out social services but the SWD? So let the SWD handle the social services portion.
It seems like you really thought about this, Senator. However, the question begs to the private sector, who could possibly win this? And, sir, if the private sector will be honest enough, I guess, to actually remit the proceeds from the games. I do note that you said that there has to be some sort of like an allowance, a monthly collection from the private sector.
In a very simple term, the DOF is an expert in coming up with financial packages and collection. That's their job, no? To collect taxes, to collect revenue. And they've come up with many financial schemes when it comes to privatization. And I believe that they're the best agency that can privatize this entire operation and come up with foolproof financial schemes so that operators will not under-remit and not declare the proper proceeds to government.
And I'm going to ask that, sir, because in fact beside me is ASEC Lambino. I'll ask him about that of the Department of Finance. But I'd like to move on, sir, to this Senate investigation. One, will you be attending? And two, who are the most important people to invite as resource persons?
Yesterday I had the chance to talk to Chairman Dick Gordon, or Senator Dick Gordon. He's the chairman of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, and he will proceed with the investigation of PCSO. And I will be very interested in learning the existing operations and where are the gaps, where are the loopholes. And again, moving forward, I'm not so confident in business as usual. We need to reform the entire operation by privatizing and simplifying it. And on top of that, to make sure that the government is sending a strong message in terms of fighting corruption, we need to punish those people who deliberately corrupted the system of PCSO.
Maraming salamat. Thank you for taking our
Thank you.
call,
Thank you,
Senator Win Gatchalian. We'll be taking a short break. A lot of questions when we come back because we have Finance Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino. Senator Win Gatchalian saying that the Department of Finance would probably be the best agency or department to look into the possible privatization of the PCSO, or the games rather of the PCSO. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte says he's satisfied with lotto operations as investigation into other PCSO authorized games continue. A Malacanang-led investigation showed no corruption in lotto operations. But while other forms of gaming such as small town lottery, STL, Kino, and Peryahan ng Bayan are still halted, how will this affect the universal healthcare law and patients requiring medical needs? Meantime, the Finance Department says many foreign workers of Philippine online gaming operations, or POGO, have not been contributing any tax. The government earlier formed a task force to look into the status of foreign workers in the country. Let's go straight to the source of the story. Finance Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino. Sir, good to have you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you for having me. It's good to
Unahin
be
ko na
here.
muna po your reaction to Senator Win Gatchalian before we get into the other topics here.
Well, this is a very welcome initiative, no, to work with our legislators more closely, because the call of Secretary Dominguez, of the Department of Finance, is really to look at the fiscal responsibility of all legislation. So if this is a revenue source, then you can balance that with some of the spending proposals that are being made. So yeah, it's something that can be thrown into the mix of these various conversations.
Something that could be studied.
Definitely.
wonder-
We do have a privatization office.
Oh,
at
you
the
do?
Department
Okay.
of Finance. Yeah.
But has it been thought of before? Would you know?
I don't.
By your privatization office?
We'll take a look at the studies that have been done.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out. And but offhand, sir, do you think that privatizing it would be better than the present setup right now?
Well, I guess there are legal dimensions to that, and the lawyers will weigh in on that. I don't know what the regulatory framework is for gaming. Also, perhaps there might be some efficiency gains that could be derived from privatization, but really, it needs to be studied.
Okay, hard to really dig into this without really looking into the effects or how this actually will work.
Plus, if I may make a pitch, Pinky,
Go
for
ahead.
financial literacy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of our fellow Filipinos really do spend a little bit of money on this and that, some regularly, you know. But at the same time, I hope at some point we become a more saving type of people also, because we need to save for the future. No? So while you can do this on the side
Yeah.
with additional disposable income, I hope that the Filipino people will also be more inclined towards savings
Saving.
and a little bit of investment
Very
here
well
and there.
said, Asek. You know, we need to remind ourselves that. All right, so now that Lotto is back, but first of all, it was suspended for a couple of days. Now it's back. So is there going to be any problem with those days that there were no Lotto operations in terms of sourcing funds?
Yeah, I was looking at the PCSO statements over the past few days, and they said they even had enough resources to run their social programs for the rest of the year. You know? So that's the big chunk. If you look at, for
No, but
instance,
because
yes.
that was the budget from last year.
Yes, correct.
Diba?
Yes.
Okay.
For next year, if we're looking at, let's say, universal healthcare, because that's one of the earmarked funds, you know, the contributions of PCSO, PAGCOR, and some other agencies and offices. Actually, PCSO was the smallest in terms of the estimate, anywhere from 3 to maybe a little more than 3 billion. In the first year, 3.2 billion the second year, 3.3 billion the third year, so on and so forth. 16.6 billion in the first 5 years.
Which comprises about 1.2%.
Less than 1.2% of the total 1.437 trillion pesos needed to run universal healthcare for the first 5 years. Now, in contrast, from the General Appropriations Act, or budget, we have around 200 billion a year. And so what we're really focusing on, and as the news came out, now we looked at the numbers again, we reviewed them carefully, and we looked at, for instance, the revenues that will come from the new sin tax law.
Yeah.
We had we just passed one. The Congress just passed the tobacco excise tax, but they separated the alcohol and the e-cigarettes and the vapes in terms of taxing at parity with regular cigarettes. So that's a package that will bring in estimated revenues of around 15.8 billion. And in contrast, the PCSO contribution would have been around 3 billion.
So you're saying that the taxes on cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and alcohol will be about 15 billion?
Actually more. The one that was passed recently, in the first year, 15.7 billion, 129.9 billion in the first 5 years. And then the new bill, around 15 billion, also around 110 billion. So 200, maybe 230, 240 billion.
See, excuse me, what confuses me is that you said that the universal health care bill for next year, because it will be implemented next year, needs about 250 billion. It's for 2020. Is
257, yes, correct.
257 billion pesos. But isn't 40%, sir, of the PCSO funds supposed to go to the UHC?
Actually, it's a percentage of a percentage. It's not just the 40%.
So we can't just say it's 40%, because if we peg a revenue at, let's say, 70 billion pesos a year, sir, if it's 40%, that would be 28 billion that
would be a
should
lot.
go to
Yes.
the UHC. And then here you are telling us that PCSO is only going to contribute 3 billion next year.
Because
so that's
there's a
not-
formula. It's a percent of a percent. So it brings us to around 3. I mean, if you look at the most aggressive estimate, potentially 5.4 maybe at most, but not more than 2% of the total cost of universal health.
Got it. So don't think that because it's 40%, you can immediately get 40% of the total revenue of, let's say, 60 or 70 billion a year. It's a
Yeah.
percent of a percent.
That's right.
Okay, but we're sure about that. But even if you say, sir, I know during the break you were saying that it's only 3 billion, but 3 billion is still a lot. So here's a question, sir. With the days that there was termination of lotto operations, would that in any way affect what is supposed to be 3 billion that is needed from the PCSO in 2020, which is next year?
Well, for universal health care, if we're looking at that program, it's much more efficient to focus on the new bill on sin taxes. Because the estimate I shared earlier, that's only for alcohol.
Yeah.
We don't even have the estimates yet for e-cigarettes and vape. And these are really public health measures. We've been looking at the research from the World Health Organization and other international health research groups. And the e-cigs and the vapes, the jury is really out on whether they're as harmful, more harmful, or less harmful than regular cigarettes. If I may just share
Please tell us.
two things. No? One is...
Because this is still a big question mark to a lot of people, because they think that e-cigarettes, they believe that e-cigarettes and vape are safer, yet there will be literature that will actually tell you, you can't say that because there's no definitive conclusion or findings yet.
Yes, and it depends on the composition of the e-juice that they call.
Is that the oil?
The fluid, yes,
Okay.
on the oil, yes. So if it has diacetyl, for instance, a substance that they put in some of these e-juices, that causes what they call popcorn lung. It will constrict the smaller
arteries,
vessels in your lungs, and then it will lead to a condition that is very similar to COPD. So, if
What
it
is the
has
name of the
diacetyl,
ingredient? Diacetyl.
yes,
Diacetyl.
not all brands have it. In fact, the more expensive ones probably don't. But still, because there are so many garage labs for vape juice, it's something that we need to look into closely. The other thing is there are some chemicals in e-juice that's used in e-cigarettes that interfere with what they call gene expression. So young people really should not be using these products because it will interfere with their development. The physical development as
of
a
your
human being.
genes.
Yes, genes will express themselves over time as you grow older. Your height, your hair, your fingers, etc. If substances get in the way of the expression of these genes, then there might be issues that will come up in
Such
the
as?
development of human beings. Well, different kinds of diseases due to lack of development of certain organs.
Is that
or
the
certain
latest
parts.
study now?
Yes, these are
Okay.
actually studies that we've been looking at that have come out over the past few months or the past couple of years.
And this came out recently in the study of the WHO.
Yes, there is a pretty hefty study on that. And I think there was one from the World Bank.
So what does it mean? Does it mean, because I'm going to go to taxation of these items, does it mean now, are they saying that vapes and e-cigarettes are more harmful than regular cigarettes, sir?
We don't know yet. The evidence is not yet conclusive. The scientific community is still debating
I see.
it. But there's enough information out there.
That it's harmful.
Yes, and to argue that we should at least tax it at parity.
Okay.
So for instance, we're taxing 10 milliliters of vape juice at 10 pesos.
So 10 milliliters of vape juice would be
Yes.
like the usual oil that they
Yes,
put there.
correct.
Okay.
In the little pods.
Okay.
Right? Now here's the thing.
How much do you tax for that?
10 pesos up to 10 milliliters, and then 20 pesos up to 20 milliliters. That's in the recently passed law. However, depends on the type of juice that you're using. One little pod of 0.7 milliliters, less than 1 milliliter, is equal to 1 pack of cigarettes. And yet, we're taxing 1 pack of cigarettes starting January of 2020 at 45 pesos per
Yeah.
pack. So 10 milliliters is like 10 packs of cigarettes or more. No? And so that's why at least we should tax it at parity.
Can I simplify that, sir? So it's as if that the pod is 10 milliliters.
A pod is less than 1. Less than 1.
Yeah, ganito na lang, sir.
Okay.
A pod,
Yes.
how many packs of cigarettes would
Around
that be?
For the small one.
Yeah, the small one.
That, anyway, I'll just qualify. It's the Saltnik type of juice. That's like 1 pack of cigarettes.
And it's being taxed 10 pesos.
Well, if you divide it by 10, kasi it's 10 pesos.
Edi 1 peso na lang.
1 peso na lang. Versus the 45
Yeah.
that we're taxing.
So
regular cigarettes.
yung pod na ganun, sir, that is equal to how many packs of cigarettes? I guess you're saying it's equal to 10 packs of cigarettes, basically.
1
10
milliliter pod, one pack. 1 pack of
1 milliliter is 1 pack. So if it's 10 milliliters, that's 10
10
packs. And it's being
That's right.
being taxed 10 pesos.
Up to 10 milliliters kasi is 10 pesos.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, that comes in the first package of the sin taxes already. So the Department of Finance is looking at increasing this in the second round. sir.
Yes, we want to bring it to parity with regular cigarettes. And more importantly, or just as important, Pinky, is to limit the flavors to those that are similar to regular cigarettes. Because the bubble gum and the creme brulee and the chocolate and the etc., these appeal to younger users. And actually, it's been linked to a lot of initiation among young people, even abroad. So we don't want these flavors available in the Philippines.
So you may what? Restrict it, prohibit it, or just increase the taxes on those flavors?
For flavors, we'd like to limit it to only regular tobacco flavor or regular menthol flavor.
We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Finance Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino. Sir, so to be clear, what you want to do with the flavors is that, number one, to limit it to menthol and regular cigarettes, and number two is to increase it in parity at par with the tax of regular cigarettes.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And again, we'd really want to discourage young Filipinos from picking this up because the nicotine is addictive in either regular cigarette form or in vape form.
Moving on to Pogo, sir. The Finance Department already said that the employees, those working for Philippine offshore gaming, should be taxed as well. How are you in terms of finding out, number one, sir, ilan ho ba yung mga empleyado ng Pogo? How many Pogo operations are there in the country? Because we are seeing an influx of Chinese, could be employees or tourists in the country.
Yes. Well, if we combine both the operators and their service providers, we're looking at several hundred operations.
Several hundred, you mean?
Yes, so around 56 to 60 operators, and there are other companies that support them in terms of technical support and other things. And so
it's like 60, I'm sorry, sir, 60 head office.
licensed,
Licensed,
by
okay.
PAGCOR. We've looked at the lists that have been brought together by various agencies. And the initial number was around 138,000 foreign nationals working in this sector. Because the names were duplicates, in some cases it was brought down to around 122,000. But still, for every 100,000, we're not collecting around 2 billion pesos a month. So that's 24 billion
A year.
a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do you plan to crack down on this and
Well,
to
it
actually
started.
find out the real numbers?
Yes, it started. There was an urgent effort that Secretary Dominguez put in place, which is forming an interagency task force with the Department of Labor and Employment, the Bureau of Immigration, PAGCOR, and other relevant agencies, just to find out first who are here and do they have the right papers to work here.
Help us understand the
And
situation.
nobody had a
Asek.
tin, by the way.
Nobody had a tin, yeah, because they came in, and they can probably come in as tourists, sir, and then they can be, either they can extend, they can hide, or they can go back and then come back again. Yun naman ho yung sinasabi.
Yes,
diba?
but what we're doing now, based on the task force's decision, is no more work visa if you don't have a tin. So you gotta get the tin
Right.
first before you're given a work visa.
And if you're given a work visa, sir, the work visa is valid for how long?
Oh, I don't know. I think it might vary. We'll double check with.
Isn't that important, sir, to also
Yes,
find
yes.
out the validity of their visa?
Definitely, and also the types of jobs that they'll be doing, because we have to check whether the actual job is something a Filipino can do.
Yeah.
Because if so, then the work visa should not be granted. It should be only granted for the jobs that Filipino workers
Cannot perform.
do. For instance, if you have to speak in a foreign language.
Mandarin, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what they're saying for Pogo. I mean, we're clear on this, sir. Construction workers who have been seen in the country, they're Chinese construction workers. Definitely that would be illegal, because that's something Filipinos can do. I want to strictly look into Pogo, sir, because the thing here is they're saying that they're here because they need Mandarin-speaking individuals. That's why Filipinos cannot perform that particular task.
Yes, because they're really operating gaming, gambling for gamblers who are abroad. So it's really done virtually. It's like you have an avatar who's gambling for you.
Yes.
And then you're connected through audio and then video.
Yeah.
And then you're telling your avatar what to do.
But why here? Why in the Philippines?
I guess it's not just here. No? There are many countries where this is done. It just so happens that our cities have the infrastructure and the connectivity for it. So we're one of the locations. I heard that there are Pogo operations from other parts of the world that are thinking of coming here as well. No?
Sir, just very quickly, over and above the taxing of the employees of Pogo and increasing taxes on vape and e-cigarettes, what else is in the pipeline?
In the pipeline are 3 more packages on the tax reform program. The Trabajo Bill, which is now called the Sitira Bill, according to Congressman Joey Salceda, who now chairs the Committee on Ways and Means. Sitira is Corporate Income Tax and Investment Reform Act. And then we have the Property Valuation Bill, and that one's really important for instance, resolving right-of-way issues and making sure property owners are not cheated by those who purchase land from them. And the last package is the financial taxes and the passive income. So these are like deposits and investments and the like. We want to make it simpler and easier for people to participate in the capital markets.
Thank you to Finance Secretary Tony Lambino. Maraming salamat po sa inyo,
Thank you,
sir.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.